My sermon today is inspired by 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 through 11. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised. 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 10 through 11. This month, we celebrate Women's History Month, and today we celebrate International Women's Day, giving thanks and reflecting on the contributions of women throughout history and the women of this generation. We acknowledge all the women who have served God and gave of themselves to make this world a softer, gentler place to live, opening their hearts to share the love of God within them, being a beacon of light during the storms of life to help us find our way, caring for us and comforting us to ease the pain, healing us with their hands and kind words, some forging new paths and being a champion not only for women's rights, but for the rights of every person. Women who had the courage and strength to step out of their comfort zone, to stand up for what is right and just. And in doing so, serving God and humanity. They gave of themselves tirelessly, and in some instances, they risked their life for another. As we reflect upon Women's Month, let us remember the women in the Bible, women such as Eve, Mother Mary, Mother Magdalene, Ruth, and Esther. Little is said of the women in the Bible. There are two books about women in the Bible, the book of Esther and the book of Ruth. The book of Esther is 9 chapters and 9 pages. The book of Ruth is 4 chapters and 5 pages. Out of 1,200 pages, 2 books and 14 pages are of women. But that doesn't diminish their significance. Esther risked her life to save her cousin Mordecai. Mordecai was like a father to her, and he raised her as his own daughter. The king was looking for a new wife, and when he met Esther, he loved her more than any of the other women presented to him, and he made her queen. Now, one of the king's noblemen decided he wanted to kill her cousin Mordecai as well as the other Jewish people because they would not bow down to him. To save her cousin's life, Esther would have to ask the king to hold court with her. Now, remember, these were very different times than we live in today. And it's important to mention that there was a law providing that if the king did not accept her invitation, she could be put to death. Esther had to choose between speaking up and risking her life or remaining silent and her cousin possibly losing his. She accepted her fate, and Esther chose to stand up for the injustices the king's noblemen sought to inflict upon her cousin and other Jews. Fortunately, the king accepted her invitation, and then, when he learned of his noblemen's plot to kill them, he was outraged. Now the tables turned, and it was the nobleman who was begging for his own life. Esther saved her cousin's life. Ruth. Ruth demonstrates God's unconditional love and action. When her husband died, she remained faithful to her mother-in-law, Naomi. Now, Naomi encouraged her to find another husband and to move on. Instead, Ruth was loyal to her, and she chose to be a companion to Naomi, and she did all she could do to take care of her. Ruth went out and worked in the fields to provide for both of them. Interestingly, metaphysically, Ruth represents the love of its soul, or the love of the soul in its natural state, and the love of God in action. In this situation, giving of oneself and putting another's needs in front of our own. May we be inspired by women such as Mother Teresa. She devoted her life to serving God by loving and caring for all of God's children. She served the poorest of the poor in Calcutta and established missionaries of charity. Over the decades, her charity grew to operate in over 133 countries, managing homes for those dying of HIV and AIDS, leprosy, and tuberculosis. And they also ran soup kitchens, dispensaries, mobile clinics, orphanages, and schools. Members of the order took vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Their fourth vow was to give wholeheartedly free service to the poorest of the poor. Mother Teresa and her missionaries touched thousands of people who had no one to care for them. They put God first, and they are examples of God in action. May we also be inspired by women such as Harriet Tubman and Rosa Parks. These women stood up for what they believed in, and they had a profound impact during the time of slavery and the civil rights movement. Harriet Tubman was born in 1822, and is remembered for using the Underground Railroad to help people escape slavery. It was remarkable. She made 13 missions to rescue about 70 enslaved people. And she continued on. In her later years, she was an activist in the movement for women's suffrage. She risked her life so others, excuse me, may live a life of freedom. Rosa Parks was born in 1913 and was a civil rights activist. She is well known for her refusal, excuse me, to move from a bus seat in Montgomery, Alabama, sparking the Montgomery bus boycott. Many of us remember this. Rosa Parks was instrumental in bringing light to civil rights, and she became known as the mother of the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1996 and the Congressional Gold Medal in 1999. Two well-deserved honors. But what she did for humanity went far beyond what any medal can mean. And let us not forget that women didn't have the right to vote in this country until 1920. Even today, in some countries, women have little or no rights, and they're treated as second-class citizens. Some are even stoned to death. I'm grateful to the women who were part of the women's suffrage movement from 1848 to 1920. Key leaders like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony initiated the movement at the 1848 Seneca Falls Convention. Many women, including Harriet Tubman, continued to fight for women's rights until Congress passed the Voting Rights Act in 1919, which was then ratified in 1920. Which leads us to the women of our generation. Not so long ago, and in my lifetime, in the mid 1960s, women were championing for equality. It was known as the Women's Liberation Movement. Women wanted a seat at the table, they wanted equal opportunities, and they wanted equal pay. And some of you may remember when they used to have ads for cigarettes. There was an ad for Virginia Slims that aired in the late 1960s, and their slogan was, "We've come a long way, baby." And oh, we have. We've come a long way since the 1800s. Because of all of the women that stood up for our rights, a woman can be whatever she chooses and dreams to be. There's no limit. Women finally have a seat at the table, a seat in boardrooms. They run their own companies, and they are leaders of countries. And I'm proud to say we elected the first woman onto the Supreme Court in 1981, and we elected the first woman vice president in 2020. And I am still hopeful there will be a woman elected to the White House as president of our country. All these women worked quietly behind the scenes, not seeking fame, glory, or recognition, giving of themselves for the sake of giving and to serve God. May we be inspired by their courage and by their faith. And may we be inspired to carry this torch that they lit. Now it is our turn. How are we going to make a difference? Women represent the divine feminine energy of God. And this divine feminine energy is in each of us, both male and female. There is a soft and tender side to us, and there is a masculine or strong and warrior-like side to us. The key is to find the balance between the two and to know when we need to be softer and when we need to be firmer. I often think of a phrase shared by Theodore Roosevelt. He said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far." Whatever path we choose, and however we choose to serve God in our life, we should do so with a good intention by listening to our heart, being kind and gentle, and forging ahead and taking action to make this world a better place. Our scripture teaches us to use whatever gift we have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God. If we speak, we should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. How can we be of service to humanity? Each of us here today has our own unique gift. How can we use our gifts as faithful stewards of God? We don't have to be a Supreme Court justice to make a difference. We can make a difference in one person's life by listening, being kind, lifting them up when they are down, or encouraging someone to believe in themselves. We can work behind the scenes by sending healing to all in need and to the world in our meditation. It only takes a few moments. Years ago, I was taught that when we tithe, we are giving of ourselves. So when we are tithing 10%, we are giving 6 minutes of every hour to God, giving of our time. giving back and sharing the blessings that we have received. I planned a volunteer event at work last week, and we volunteered at Food for All in Washington, D.C. We packaged bags of groceries to be delivered to people who are shut in or food insecure. And we made sandwiches to feed the homeless. It was so fulfilling. And the head of the organization shared with us that with all the budget cuts, these organizations have lost millions of dollars that fed the food insecure. It is sad that we are taking from the poor. WMC and its members donate to the Capital Area Food Bank. And I want to share with you that what I learned was that Food for All DC gets some of their food from the food bank, and then they are a channel to distribute it through the DC community. It warmed my heart to see our donations in action, helping our community. And this is one way we serve God and humanity. Our scripture also tells us that if we speak, we should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. There is a Buddhist teaching that has stuck with me throughout the years. It teaches us that before we speak, we should consider whether our words are kind, true, and necessary. If it doesn't meet two of the three criteria, then perhaps it doesn't need to be said. And we should just keep it to ourselves. There are some things that are necessary to be said and are true. And in that instance, they can be said with kindness. Are they kind? Are they true? And are they necessary? I have learned that how we deliver a message can make all the difference. Our words have the power to build someone up or tear them down. And once the spoken word is released, it can't be brought back. So be mindful. Pause for a moment. Say to yourself, are they kind? Are they true? And is it necessary? And if I have to say them, how can I say them with kindness? What footprints do we want to leave behind? And how do we want to be remembered? As we are inspired by these beautiful souls who have come before us and those with us today, may each of us look within to reflect upon the divine feminine energy in us, contemplating how we may be of service to God through our thoughts, our words, and our action, finding the path that resonates with our soul and giving cheerfully and unconditionally. For when we do so, we shall know God. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. Namaste.